Kia ora katoa. Welcome to the API Centre and Tech Week. We'll start with our Payments New Zealand karakia tematanga. Ranga mai ko te kotahitanga, ranga mai ko te mana oriti, ranga mai ko te whanangatanga, ranga mai ko te kawangatanga, ranga mai ko te rangatiratanga, ko au, ko koe, ko tātou, tihei, Māori ora. My name's Phil Cass. I'm the API Centre Manager. It's great to be part of Tech Week once again, and thanks to NZ Tech for putting this great event on. It's a privilege for me to speak to you today about the progress that we've made on open banking and the journey that we've been on in Aotearoa through, and also then be passing on to Nigel, who'll do a tech deep dive. We're aware that Nigel is the main event here, and 99% of you have signed up because you want to hear about the tech. So I won't talk too much up front. But for those of you that are new to our world, the API Centre is a business unit of Payments New Zealand, and we've played a central role in bringing open banking to life in New Zealand. We've taken a bold vision and turned it around and made it an operational reality. So the API Centre, what do we do? We do many things. It's more than just the technical standards. We have operational standards. We're working on a partnering and accreditation regime at the moment. We have a trust framework through our register. We have our turn P's and C's, which are our rules. We have a sandbox, policies, rules, and much, much more. To develop this ecosystem, the industry has spent 7 years meeting virtually every week, sometimes twice a week, to get to the stage that we are. Over 100,000 hours. Through everything that we've done, we've had one sort of guiding principle, and that is to be industry-led. So to that end, I'd really like to acknowledge that the work of the industry in achieving what we've done so far. Most recently, we're now on the cusp of delivering version 2.3 payments initiation. That's due on the 30th of May to be delivered by our 4 largest banks, and we actually have one bank that's already delivered this. Key feature in version 2.3 is enduring payment consent, which could be used to replace direct debits. I'll just take you through a couple of use cases where enduring payment consent could be used for. If there's anybody out there from Waka Kotahi, there's a fantastic use case that will help not just Waka Kotahi, but also help me, and that's using tolls on roads. If you're anything like me, whenever I go through tolls, I always forget to pay them. Going north out of Auckland, going to the beaches, at the end of the day, the last thing you're sort of remembering to do when you get home is pay your tolls. So what you can do is set up parameters. So the parameter could be that if it's less than $10 a day, then I've given my consent to pay the toll. If it's more than $10 in a day, then I want to be notified, and then I can query it and review it. That serves 2 purposes. Waka Kotahi don't need to have the admin and the cost of having to send me a letter, which I'll receive 3 or 4 weeks later, and also I'm not going to get the admin or the fine that's put on top of that, so it's going to be cheaper for me. So everybody wins. Another enduring payment consent use case is around a power bill. It could be as simple as my parameter is if it's under $200 a month, then I'll automatically pay it. If it's over $200 a month, I want to be made aware of that. Your third-party app or your banking app may have the power company invoice in there, and you'll be able to review that, and if need be, then accept the authorization, or you will be able to say, no, I don't want to pay this, and you'll be able to query the invoice. But however you look at it, open banking is here, there's momentum, and it is real. As we look ahead to customer product and data legislation, there is the responsibility to transition smoothly to regulation. The API Centre is committed to working closely with NBIE to make the transition efficient and aligned. We're also equally committed to ensuring that the system remains industry-led, because we know the power of collaboration to deliver value to every New Zealander. To the fintech community, this is your time. The standards are there, the rules are in place. I challenge you to deliver new customer propositions, solve long-standing pain points, and lift financial well-being across the country. If you take nothing else from today, know that open banking is here, it is already in use, and there are hundreds of thousands of customers already using open banking. So take the challenge. We have the QR code there that you can see on the screen now. Become a community contributor. That's a free membership. Play in the sandbox, see what you can come up with. Our team's always happy to speak with you and help you. And if you need further information, I'm really looking forward to seeing what new propositions emerge. So now we'll pass to. I'll pass on to Nigel Summerfield. We'll take a deeper dive into the engine room of our progress, and Nigel will take you through our technical standards and how they work.
Ngā mihi, Phil. Thank you for the introduction. So thank you everybody for joining and for the opportunity to present today. I'm just going to bring up some slideware, because you can't have a presentation without the mandatory slides. What I'm going to do today is go through some basics, background, cover a little bit of terminology. Then we'll go into the standards themselves, specifications, and some of the tooling that we have available. I'll have a go through walk through the API Centre sandbox, including how to set it up and use it, so you can start getting familiar, hands-on with the standards and how they work. There's a couple of demos I'll show of that in use. Then I'll go through an example API client just briefly, showing that programmatically how to create a customer consent and use that with the APIs. Then I'll go through some questions and answers. There's some that have been already submitted. If you have questions as we go through the presentation, please put them in the Q&A section of the webinar as we go through. What you'll also find in the Q&A section is a survey. If you wouldn't mind filling that in at the end of the presentation, that'd be very much appreciated. It helps us shape these sessions so that in the future we can be more useful and meaningful to you. Okay, so going through the background, of course you already know all this anyway, but I'll just go through it in case anybody's new. So open banking is effectively a new bank channel. It enables programmatic access to customer data held at the bank. In our case, it also enables payment initiation, which Phil's already mentioned. We have one-off payments, and in the version 2.3 that's being released at the end of the month, there'll be enduring payment consents as part of that, which then enables multiple payments from one consent. So access is via application programming interfaces or APIs. These are standardized so that when any third-party fintech, etc., wants to connect, the standards give them a consistent way of doing that across all the banks or API providers. Open banking is still pretty new in New Zealand, and I'd say still relatively new globally, although it has been around for a few years now. In the UK, we have open finance in Brazil, but there's still a lot that's emerging and being tried out. So, some basics. What we have today is essentially two parts. Is the account information, which gives things like account details, balances, transactions, and so on. We have payment initiation, which enables payments between bank accounts within New Zealand with amounts in New Zealand dollars, and these are consented in separate flows. A key aspect of the standards is that the customer is in control, and there are fine-grained data permissions. We have guidelines in terms of presenting the consents and asking for authorization by customers. We have multiple authorization flows that support that, and customers can revoke the consent at any time. We also have a robust set of security controls to ensure that only allowed third parties that have agreements in place with the banks can access the APIs. And that will be some of the focus of what I go through today. So some terminology, most will be probably familiar with this anyway, but just to let you know, so authentication, we're talking about presenting credentials to demonstrate identity. Authorization is the act of granting consent on a request, as approving consent on a requested consent sent in by a third party. We have keys and certificates sort of used interchangeably in terms of the terminology, but we do have different layers to which they apply. For example, we require client certificates to enable mutually authenticated TLS between third parties and API providers. And we also use keys for signing tokens, so essentially for signing request or response tokens. The sandbox, which I'll be talking about, is essentially an environment that is hosted on the internet that any community contributor can get access to start testing out and developing against the standards. I'll walk through this in some detail. The security profile defines the controls that are applied to the APIs and defines the mechanisms for authentication and authorization, leveraging upstream standards. In standards, we talk about they're basically treated as definition of data and functionality in the open banking APIs. And as I mentioned, tokens is effectively, we rely heavily on these in the security profile for proving identity and so on. Okay, so the security profile is effectively designed or is derived, I should say, from the financial grade API, which is created by the OpenID Foundation. This heavily leverages OAuth 2 and related set of standards. So I won't go through all of these, but suffice to say, if we map those out, we get a fairly comprehensive picture. So our security profile is the little box in blue at the top of this, and you can see we have this kind of spider's web of standards that are there to protect the ecosystem, shall we say, ensuring that there's only allowed parties communicate with each other. So that protects customer data to a high degree. Okay, so the very first thing I'm going to do is go play a video which will walk through the sandbox, show you where to find the standards, the specifications, and some of the tools that will be useful as part of it. So I haven't recorded audio, so I'll be narrating as we go along. So this is the landing page for the API Center. So this is published publicly, and basically we have the links along the top to show standards, tools, etc. But what you want to do is get signed up so you can log in, and you'll see this kind of landing page. So what we have within this landing page of the API Center is access to the GitHub, Confluence, and the sandbox itself. First of all, we'll go into Confluence to have a look at the standards. And so the landing page of the standards here basically shows all the versions that we have published and that are available to go through. So we have the kind of overview, we have the security profile, we have account information, payment initiation, and an upcoming version 3, which is later on as events. So if we go into the account information one, basically this is where you can set up a consent, which we'll show in the sandbox shortly. That consent, once approved, effectively grants access to the other resources such as accounts, balances, and so on that you can see down the left there. So the consents themselves are the kind of the key to the whole thing. Account information has a set of parameters around it as well to control to what degree you can access things. Inside the payment initiation, it's a similar setup. We have domestic payment consents, which I'll show in detail later, and we have the upcoming enduring payment consents. So these are essentially, as mentioned, they're just a way to transfer funds as an alternative to things like your scheme debit credit cards. This is the where you can find the security profile. This is the what defines all the security controls that are in place on the APIs themselves, as well as the authorization flows that customers go through to authorize the consents once submitted by the third party. So we have examples, we have implementation guides, we have the references to the upstream standards, which you need to be familiar with as well. So it's quite a comprehensive set of things available there. Also on the standards site, we have other things such as the customer experience guidelines, we have some FAQs, we have policies and so on, so you can have a look at all that material around how the standards are intended to operate. Next up, we'll go over to our public GitHub repos to just show where to find the Open API and Swagger specifications. So this is publicly available in the account information API, for example. We simply have a distribution folder which has all the published versions of the standards as JSON and YAML formatted Swagger specs in this case, Open API in the case of version 3 and beyond, which is where we cut over from version 2 Swagger to version 3 of Open API. So that's the standards and specifications which relate to each other, and then we have the sandbox. So this is just the very quick introduction to show this. So there, getting started, APIs and the APIs and the authorization and authentication APIs as part of that. So that's just a very quick walkthrough. There's also the Postman collection. So this will be of interest to developers. So we have this nice Postman collection which shows walks through all the examples, and just showing here there's the example of how to create account access consents can be easily found in here. So if you wanted to see how those work at that very deep level, the Postman collection is there to help you with that. Obviously, the sandbox itself has this capability as well, and that's what I will show next. So again, just a plug for the API Center. If you would like to get access to all of this, we do publish the Confluence and GitHub publicly. The sandbox does require you to join as a community contributor, but this is no cost to doing that. It's just so we know who's effectively using it, so we can also let you know if we're planning maintenance or adding new features. And community contributors also get to review upcoming changes to specifications, proposals, this sort of thing. So it also increases your visibility of what's going on. Okay, I will move on to the sandbox setup and use. So this is again pre-recorded because it's better to often to pre-record these things than to risk doing them live in case something goes wrong. So back into the sandbox, and assuming that's actually playing. So yes, we'll go into what does getting started look like. So getting started is okay, you should understand standards. The second thing to do is probably to create a client application. We'll go through that shortly. Explore the APIs. There's various try-me functions. Again, the Postman collection can be found in here. And also familiarizing yourself with some of the limitations. So because it is a sandbox, not everything is possible to have 100%. So here's the account information API. And so effectively, those familiar with Swagger Editor will look very familiar. So we have everything there that I kind of talked about in terms of the standards, so as you'd expect. And that's just you can go through each of those kind of individually. There's the payment initiation API. So here's enduring payment consents, domestic payment consents, and then domestic payments, which can be use either of those consents to create payments. So that's those APIs. Then we have the authentication endpoints. So keys, authorizers. This will look, anybody familiar with OAuth 2 will have familiarity with some of those, but we do have a couple of additional ones for security profile. So again, information on security profile here. This is where you can get the well-known metadata, and this one here shows data. There's data manipulation APIs for the sandbox, so you can change the information that you're seeing through the mocked-up APIs. This is an example of a client application that I've seen previously, and you can add more. You can have more than one. It's just the one that I'll be using today for the demo, and you can then basically that's a quick tour of setting up the sandbox. So the next one that I have to show you will show this actually being used. So we're starting to get into very much more technical levels here. So I apologize to anyone who isn't as interested in the nth degree of detail of these. So what we'll do is we'll go into account information, we'll set up a consent, and there's two steps to this. There's creating the consent as part of a client, or you can use this account access consent, which will do the client setup, third-party setup, as well as request a authorization of the consent by me. So there's a series of steps there that you can see, and so this will effectively walk us through those. So this is the first request. We've authenticated ourselves as a client, which enables us to then set up this consent with these parameters. And you can see here I'm asking for everything. This wouldn't be required for depending on your use case, but it's just to show there's a superset of permissions that are available. So that was a successful setup and waiting authorization. We'll now go into requesting authorization through the model bank. Sorry. What's supposed to happen? So come back, go through again. So now we're going into the model bank, and I will authenticate as per my bank's setup, which whatever that is, which could be a thumbprint, could be anything else. This is just the sandbox to show you. So I'm presented with a list of permissions that are being requested by the third-party client, and I will select the accounts that I want to share with them. So that will then redirect me back over, and I've got a authorization code as part of that response, and I'm going to exchange that for the access and refresh tokens, which will enable me to actually access the API. So you can see there the access tokens come back successfully. So now I can go into the accounts endpoint as the third party and say, okay, I would like to make an example request and see what information I can get back. And you'll see here the two accounts that that I gave permission on. And if I select the ID from the first account, I can then go and ask for the balance for that by the account ID. So we'll pop up and go and have a look at the balance for that account. As you can see there, that's come back, and that said I have almost $20,000 in the account, and that's an available balance. So that's effectively using the sandbox just through through a browser to test out the APIs, see what data you can get access to, the permissioning structure, and so on. So that's the sandbox that's built in. But I know being Tech Week, what you all really want to see is code. And so why not? Let's have a look at some admittedly poorly written code because I wrote it. But we'll go and have a look at some of this. So this is a pre-recorded walkthrough of a client written in Python. It was not using AI vibe code. It was by hand. So apologies, the structure may not be as nice as you might expect elsewhere. So we'll go through this. And so this one here will do effectively what we just did and go and create an account access consent. And we'll basically go through you can see that I've got certificates and keys as required, and the signing keys are down here. So effectively 2 layers are required, one for MTLS and one for signing. So we'll be creating our JOT tokens for signing and authorizing. So effectively creating request objects as well as proving identity and submitting this JSON object that will ask for a series of permissions. We'll be going through that. We'll use some sandbox magic to authorize that consent. And at the end of this run, we will have a authorization code come back. So we'll step through that very shortly. So you can see here, we'll pick out the consent ID, let's say authorize, and get a response back. So this is going to call the version 2.3 endpoints, and we'll see the output in the window below. So there's the requesting client credentials. There's our client credentials response. Submitted a consent request, and you can see the details of that are here. We'll also have a look and check that the status of that is awaiting authorization. That will come up in a moment. So debtor and creditor accounts is part of the setup. There's awaiting authorization. There we go. So we've posted that successfully. We've got authorization has just occurred, and now we checked out the ID token. So the ID token contains signatures and hashes of the access token and the state that was submitted. So this is just effectively acting as a detached signature to assure that the information coming back matches as we'd expect. So the next step is to go exchange the authorization code for token. We'll do that using JOT bearer, private key JOT auth. And so that will come back and effectively say, yes, so here's the request that we did. We did it with client assertion JOT bearer, and that's the private key auth. And we submitted a big assertion that we signed as a JOT token, and we got back refresh and access tokens and an ID token to confirm integrity. So what we can do now is use that to submit the actual final payment that we want to make. So we've gone through the journey to set up and authorize the consent, and now we can submit the same information that was in the consent, and that will effectively come back and say that will be compared with the consent, and as long as the two match, that returns a positive. And so there we go, we've got a confirmation that's come back. So if you look at the top there, that will say 201 created, so the payment was created. The status is accepted, settlement completed, so that has been conducted. It was for $23. All the other information is we submitted, and so that's an example of a successful payment flow. That's just a one-off, and should we try to do anything again, we will just be told no, that's all done. So during consent, of course, that would be different. We would be able to reuse the consent to make other payments, but only within the parameters that we've set up as part of that consent. So thank you for being with me. I know I actually said at the start that was the same flow we just went through. It was actually not the same flow. The previous flow was for account information. This was for payment initiation. Apologies for that. Sometimes it's difficult when you're trying to navigate a demonstration as well as talk. So I'll go now into our Q&A section. We have had some questions that have been submitted as part of the setup for this. So we've had a few that I'll just go through, and then if there's any others, if you've submitted them into the Q&A section, we'll try and get to some of those as well. So questions have been already submitted. How genuinely operationally ready are the major banks to onboard and support a large volume third-party provider like a major grocery retailer? What does realistic onboarding timeline and process involve beyond stated minimum requirements? So at the moment, there's this multi parts to this. So all the 4 major banks are operationally ready. In terms of the volumes that they can support, we don't actually have information on that yet. We know that there has been significant growth from third parties that have already onboarded, and so the scale is already kind of happening. We are also working on a performance standard, which will set out the requirements for and expectations around things like response time and throughput and so on. So we are working on that. The banks are ready to partner. The timeframes to onboard does vary. It does vary depending on which APIs you're going to be accessing, your use case, and some other, there's just things that go into it as part of that assessment in terms of how ready you are and what you're looking at doing. So the timelines, as I say, can vary, and it's also a reflection on the relative maturity. So open banking is live, it is here, but it hasn't matured and bedded in as yet in terms of some of the processes are still being worked on. Now, some of that, as Phil mentioned early on, we're also looking at accreditation and partnering to help streamline some of that, because sometimes there is some variation. So we're looking to try and reduce that down. So hopefully I've answered that question sufficiently, but if not, please post up again, and if there's anything that specifically you want to know. I can't guarantee I can give you all the timeframes for all the banks, unfortunately, because I just don't know them. Are there any open API specifications? Yes, there are. Those are the GitHub ones I showed earlier. Will you be providing the API chain to get each step completed in the user journey, as there are many APIs that need to be orchestrated to perform a function? Yes, so that was me going through the 2 flows. So one I did in the sandbox, one was in the code, showing the steps taken. So you're absolutely right. There are a number of steps. Once you have, in the case of account information, you set up it's considered enduring consent as well. So it's a long-lived consent that enables you to make multiple requests to different APIs. Excuse me. So when you go through and have completed the consent flow, you can then use those to make multiple requests, as I requested for listing the accounts and then for getting the balance of an account. So the API chain is always consent submission, consent authorization, and then consent use. If you have a short-lived consent, which is, for example, a domestic payment consent, then that is a single-use consent. But both the account information and the enduring payment consent allow you to do ongoing activity. So you don't have to take the user through the same journey every single time. If you do want to change the parameters, however, if you want to say add a new data permission, we were only getting accounts before, now we want accounts, balances, and transactions, you'll need to resubmit a consent so that you can ask for those permissions as well, and the customer is kept informed throughout that journey. So hopefully we've shown the API chain, and hopefully that's all made sense. Could I comment on how harmonized the standards are to Australia's CDR? I think that's pretty easy to answer. They're not really, in the sense of the APIs themselves provide similar data, but they are not. We've not attempted to make them one-to-one with Australia. The security profile has considerable overlap. At the start, I mentioned that we use the OpenID FAPI as the basis for our security profile. Australia does as well. However, Australia does not use the decoupled or client-initiated back-channel authentication method of authorizing consents. Australia also does not have payments, so they do not at this stage in CDR have action initiation at all. So I would say not harmonized probably is the best way to think about it, but the security aspects are very similar. So if you familiarize yourself with the security profile on either side of the Tasman, you're on your way, and then you just have to understand the different data structures that are used for each. What you would find is a good deal of overlap between the New Zealand open banking standards and the UK standards because we effectively use them as our primary upstream reference. So, what are the main challenges that face while building open banking? There's quite a long list. There's a lot of things that go into any of this. It was a big collaborative effort on behalf of all the banks and third parties who have been on the journey for a very long time. I think everybody has put a lot of time and effort. As Phil mentioned, there's at least 100,000 hours of effort have gone in, and I would say probably considerably more than that now. Big challenges. Whenever you have a diverse group of people, you're always walking a balance between what is technically feasible, what is desirable, what is cost effective, what is highest demand versus lowest, and also balancing and saying, well, ultimately the customer is at the heart of everything. So what is it the customer would like to see? What does the customer want out of this? And even on that topic, you get different opinions and perspectives that come through. Some from ranging from very open to very conservative. Balancing all of that has been probably one of the bigger challenges, but and the amount of time it takes to make sure that we've listened and heard all the different perspectives and views. It's a very consultative process, which sometimes means that it can feel frustratingly slow to move things forward, but progress has been made and will continue to be made. It just takes time and effort. So I think hopefully that's answered that. There's a whole range of challenges associated with something of this nature. When we provide access to the third party, how is the privacy of the user withheld? So I think I'll read that as how is the privacy of the user protected? There are a number of data protections we have in the communication between third party and bank. That's one of the mechanisms. When we do release or do use identifiers of customers, we use pseudonymous pairwise identifiers that are unique to the third party that are released. So effectively, this just means that activities can't be correlated, so you can't be readily tracked across activities you're doing with different clients or different API providers. We do have principles around data minimization. The permissioning and consent structure is another control on that to try and say, well, you don't release information if you don't want to. There's basic and detailed permissions on most of the API endpoints. So we do have a number of controls in there. And we are also looking at ways to refine that as we move ahead as well. So when we, I wouldn't say it's perfect yet, but then it's nothing ever is. So we've tried to get as much of that in as we can while still hopefully maintaining a degree of usability and not raising the bar too high so that when third parties are looking at this, that it doesn't feel like an insurmountable barrier to get through. Next big step, I think, is just seeing the real world use cases emerge from what's there. Forging ahead into more standards updates, getting more functionality over the line, and that actually answers into speaks to the next one as well. There's a lot of things that are on the roadmap. One of the big ones I think that we'd like to lean into is digital identity. That helps with privacy as well as speaking to trying to reduce fraud and basically offering better customer protections. So those are, I guess, some of the things around the privacy big steps. The new functionalities that are coming up. We are looking at new and different types of payments. There's a whole lot of other things that are being consulted on the roadmap. I won't speak too much of that because it is very much a work in progress at this stage. So there's a lot of things that are on there and is being driven by conversations with what is possible, what is desirable, again, trying to prioritize all that. And it's actually quite a big ask to get that delivered. So road mapping and going through is it's actually a really big job to go through all of that effort. So I think yes, the basically we're looking at everything that's on screen. So we're looking at better ways of handling consents. We're looking at ways of making them both more granular, but also more easy to use. And at the moment, some of because the account information and payment initiation are consented separately. If you need both sets, then you're effectively going through two flows. So we're looking at ways around making that process smoother. We're looking at yes, so new payment types and the ones that I mentioned there. So I think that's all that came through for those questions. Do we have anything that's come through? So what have we got? So I see there's some that have been into the Q&A. Got some here. So right. So I think there's one there that's asking around legislation. So if I'm reading it right, how is Payments New Zealand working to ensure alignment between its industry-led initiatives such as the API Centre and the upcoming consumer data right legislation led by MB? So this would be the Customer Product Data Act as it is now. In order to avoid duplication and ensure a cohesive regulatory and operational framework for open banking, let's just say we have been working with MB for a long time and continue to work with them. I think the relationship is a productive one. I think that this is something that we'll continue to lean into going forward. We see regulation as a positive step, and I think MB recognised the value that's already been delivered out of the industry-led initiative. Globally, we have seen that, in particular, the UK are restarting their work, and so they were, of course, regulatory driven, and they're moving a little bit more back towards industry driven to help some of the get a bit more innovation going in that space. So I guess the answer to this one really is that we see that we would like to continue the working relationship we have with MB, and we think they will probably utilise the work that we've done as the standard side of things, and trust framework and everything else that we have kind of established, so that there is no duplication and the transition is hopefully fairly smooth. Right. So I think there's a few that are coming through. So I'm going to pick ones that I think technical. So actually, something's just gone wrong there. Right. Sorry, folks. So there's a few things here that I think are outside of what I can actually answer. Perhaps so there's a question there. What headwinds are we expecting to see for those looking to consume open banking APIs? For example, implementation issues for non-technical consumers, manage the compliance responsibility that come with such APIs, costs related with ongoing maintenance of such integrations. Yes, there are definite challenges. However, what we've seen so far in the third parties that have been on the journey for a while, who they're seeing strong demand for their services and for alternative payment methods, and so the headwinds, yes, you're right. We're I guess quite well aware of those. We've encountered a lot of them. It's challenging to move an industry along. You always have the balancing act, and we don't always get it 100%. But the big challenge is, of course, trying to get to a point where you can say this is a next viable step. This is a next viable step. And it sometimes doesn't feel like it's enough, and sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes it feels like it's too much. It's too much risk. But it's effectively just maintaining the focus on what is a good outcome for customer, what is a good outcome for third parties, what's a good outcome for Aotearoa NZ as a whole. And when you're down, as I am, in the detail, it's quite challenging to maintain that focus at times. But it does turn out that the details do matter. So getting in and making sure that each of those kind of decisions and proposed changes that we work on is meaningful, it has a good impact. It helps you keep that focus. So yes, there's definite costs involved in managing all this stuff at the moment. There's membership fees for that are associated with the standards. So it's just one of those things that it's no matter what industry you're in, no matter what initiative you're trying to achieve, you're going to have some of these challenges, and some of these will be run by regulatory bodies. So probably things like compliance. Maybe run by the regulator rather than the API Centre. We may be more focused on the standards side of things going ahead. Dividing it up is it's challenging, and it's very much a kind of an open space at the moment. It's all being kind of worked through because things are moving ahead in those areas very rapidly, and we're just trying to make sure that they land kind of sensibly for everybody. I see there are more questions coming through. What we might end up doing is having to answer some of these offline, because I think some may be not specific to open banking. Sorry, just going through. There's another one there. I think I've already answered that one because it was asking about the authentication flows. So the question is, there are two separate authentication flows to get access to account information and enduring payment consent, and the answer is yes, there are two separate flows to go through today. As mentioned, we're looking at ways in which we can streamline that in the future. It has to make sense from a customer consenting and user experience. We do have customer experience guidelines that we spend quite a lot of time looking at how the consenting information, because it's quite technical, how that should be presented in a meaningful way, so that we follow, so that we can adhere to guidelines for things like free, prior, informed consent, so that when a customer is seeing this, they're not overwhelmed with legalese, and they can answer it. But yes, at the moment, the answer is yes, there's two separate flows there. Right, so there's a question in here. If I do a payment using payment initiation domestic payments API, how does the interbank clearing work? Are you still routed post by BEX, etc.? And when will this change? So the answer is yes, it's still via BEX. The SBI process still applies. So SBI 365, as you'll be aware, we do have that, but these are not processed in real time. The statuses we have today refer to being accepted for processing within a provider. So if you were doing a provider and you're effectively paying from one account to another within a provider, then it would be cleared pretty quickly. But otherwise, if it's between institutions, between banks, then the payment will flow through the BEX SBI process. When will this change? So another part of Payments New Zealand is working on the next generation of payments, and that is looking at how things, basically what does the next generation of payments look like? Does it look more closer to real time? Does it look for settlement and interchange? Those are questions that remain open. We have been out for consultation on that in the last few months, and we've got a lot of feedback from different parties that are interested in that. Unfortunately, we don't have an answer to that yet, but as of today, the domestic payment that you make through open banking will behave very much as if you made it through your online banking, through internet banking or mobile banking. So another question there around using the sandbox. So there's a question, is it possible to create edit transactions in Sandbox, or will we receive predefined set of transactions? So the answer to this is, if you do a domestic payment within the Sandbox, that will be reflected. So you can see that it will appear in your transaction list if you have an account information consent as well. So there is a element of data manipulation that you can do, and also the APIs, the payment initiation APIs do change the state within there, so you will see that come through. I didn't emphasize that in my demo, but that is effectively what happens. So, Quinton, is there support for new account name verification systems so that you can verify the name associated with an account number is correct? So this is referring to confirmation of payee or get verified. So the answer is we don't directly have that information within the APIs themselves, but as you authorize payments, for example, your bank can do confirmation of payee at the authorization step. And so the consent authorization step can effectively take care of that for you, but that's outside the scope of what we do within the standards today. That might change in the future, but there's no, or it might not. But at the moment, no, we don't. And actually, because the standards, of course, predate the confirmation of payee system, we don't have that specifically within this, but can be done by the banks anyway. So I see another one there. Can we use this to say, as opposed to say Stripe for a software as a service payment scheme? Are there any fees involved in payment initiation? So this one is interesting. Yes, you can definitely use it. It's an alternative to Stripe for an account-to-account payment within New Zealand. You can't do international or anything else at this stage. Those are what I would consider roadmap items, but yes, you can. Are there any fees involved? For anybody who's been following the CDR/Consumer Product Data Act announcements by MB, you would have seen that yes, there is a fee that can be applied for a domestic payment that has been capped at, albeit the cap has been announced at 5 cents per payment. So I think that's probably about as many questions in there that I can answer right now. So with that, having gone through the presentation and attempted to answer as many questions as I can in this section, I hope that you found this to be useful. What I would like to do is close out with Karakia Whakamutanga. Kia tau, ti Māori. Kia tau, ti Maramatanga. Kia tau, ti Rangamāori. Kia tātou katoa. Haumie, huie, taiki. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time today.